Statistics Indonesia, or BPS, reported on Wednesday that Indonesia economic growth reached 5.03% in 2024, mainly due to processing industry and household consumption. BPS reported that Indonesia GDP experience hit 5.03% of growth in 2024, which was 0.02% slower compared to GDP growth in 2023 with 5.05%. From industrial sector, processing industry was the biggest source to the growth with 18.98% of contribution, followed by trade, agriculture, construction, and mining. From expenditure group, household consumption had the highest contribution with 54.04%, followed by gross fixed capital formation and export. All Indonesian regions experienced GDP growth, with Java contributing the most with 57.02%. Meanwhile, Maluku and Papua experienced the highest growth with 7.81%.
Industri pengolahan tumbuh karena didorong oleh permintaan domestik dan luar negeri, di mana industri makanan dan minuman tumbuh 5,9% yang ditopang oleh permintaan domestik untuk konsumsi dan bahan baku industri serta permintaan luar negeri. Industri logam dasar tumbuh 13,34%, sejalan dengan peningkatan permintaan luar negeri, utamanya besi dan baja.
To discuss more about this matter, joining us to break down the latest report is Amalia Adininggar, Acting Chief of Statistics Indonesia. Bu Amalia, thank you so much for joining us here on See Today as always. So this week we have a lot of reports, but one of them for today we have the Indonesia GDP report. Now, what are the key drivers behind the country's economic growth?
So actually, if you look at the figure that we presented today, actually on the demand side, the GDP growth is actually driven by consumption, private consumption. And then the contribution of private consumption is actually as much as 2.6% to 5.03%. So meaning that 2.6% of 5.03% is contributed by private consumption. And the second contributors to our GDP growth in 2024 is actually came from investment. And the source of growth from investment is actually around 1.43%. So actually on the demand side, the growth is driven mainly by private consumption and investment. And on the production side, if you look at the production side, and then the growth in 2024 is actually mainly driven by manufacturing industry, and secondly is by trade sector, and then the third one is due to construction growth in 2024.
All right, so as you mentioned earlier, it looks like more than half of the contribution is coming from private now. How are the manufacturing, agricultural, and service sectors performing? Is there any key trends happening in those sectors?
Can you say that again, please?
Yes. So how are the manufacturing, agriculture, and service sectors performing? And is there any key trends happening in those sectors?
Yes, actually, as we saw from our growth performance, manufacturing industry is performing quite well because its contribution to GDP is the highest among the other sectors. And if you look at the agricultural sector, and then the growth of agricultural sector is around the growth of agriculture is around 0.8%, and actually if you asking about services sector, two of the sectors contributed to our GDP growth in 2024. And then among the top three, among the top three is actually trade and construction. Is actually those are services sectors, and then it is also one of the highest sectors experiencing growth in 2024. If I could mention again the contribution of sectors to our GDP on the production side is like this. From manufacturing industry, the contribution to GDP is around 19.13%, and then trade sector is around 13%, and then agricultural sectors is actually contributed around 11.3%, and construction around 10.4%, and mining sectors is actually around 9.4%. So those are actually the 5 top sectors that share the highest share to the GDP in the fourth quarter of 2024. Now I would like to highlight regarding to the growth of those top 5 sectors in the fourth quarter of 2024. As I mentioned earlier, manufacturing industry is actually the main contributors to our economic growth in either in 2024 or in the fourth quarter of 2024. The growth of the manufacturing industry is around 4.9% in this quarter, year on year, and then trade sector growing faster than manufacturing sectors, which is achieved 5.2% of growth for trade sector. And then agricultural sector in this quarter growing at 0.71% in quarter 4, 2024. So I will mention to you later regarding to the figure of the whole year 2024.
All right. Well, I was wondering if you can give us some information on this. How have global factors like interest rate policies and commodity prices impacted Indonesia economy?
Yeah, actually for the commodity prices, we can see very clearly from the gold prices because gold prices is actually transmitted to the jewelry prices from gold jewelry prices that is bought by the consumer in Indonesia, and then it is reflected in our consumer price index, especially from the gold jewelries, and then it is create inflation from gold jewelries and reflected in the inflation of Indonesia, either monthly inflation and also in yearly inflation. But again, if I could mention again regarding to the inflation figure in January 2025, that Indonesian economy experienced monthly inflation, which is deflation, month-to-month deflation compared to the previous month is around minus 0.76%. But yearly inflation, year-on-year inflation, we are achieving the inflation very stable, around 0.76% in January 2025. And then one of the contributor of this is actually the discount electricity tariff from the government is also reflected in the inflation figure in January 2025.
All right. Now, beside the GDP report this week, the latest inflation data by Statistics Indonesia was released earlier this week. How does this month rate compare to previous month and the same period last year?
Yeah, this is what I just mentioned earlier, Mas Indra, that if we would like to compare inflation, yearly inflation, meaning that the inflation January 2025 compared to January last year, then Indonesia is experiencing inflation as much as 0.76%. And then if we compare the inflation rate from this month, from January 2025 compared to the previous month, which is December 2024, then Indonesia experiencing deflation as much as minus 0.76%. This is one of the figures that I can explain to you that the core inflation is still inflation. Core inflation is around 0.3% compared to the previous month. And then what I would like to highlight as well is regarding to volatile food inflation. That volatile food inflation is around 2.95% monthly, meaning that month to month compared to the previous month. But one of the contributors of the deflation of monthly inflation is from the administered price inflation, which is around minus 7.38%, contributed by the discount prices of electricity tariff.
All right, Bu. So looking ahead, what's the inflation outlook for the coming reports that we're gonna see for the next report?
I would like to suggest that our institution is not doing the projection, but later on in next month, on the 1st March of 2025, we'll be releasing the next inflation figure for February 2025, and then we can see later on during our inflation release in March 1, 2025. Again, what I would like to highlight is that inflation is manageable in Indonesia, and also one of the underlying that we have to understand is regarding to the volatile food inflation that need to be managed in this month and also for the coming months, because of Indonesia is facing the Ramadan and also Idul Fitri. That some prices, especially food prices and volatile food prices, need to be carefully managed.
All right, Bu Amalia, thank you so much for spending your time here today at See Today. I hope I see you again. Of course, I'm going to see you again next month on the next report. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was our conversation with Amalia Adininggar, Acting Chief of BPS for today's Business Talk. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Our handle at See Today News. We are also available online at seetodaynews.com. Let's stay connected.